Pay attention to the body in this photo. This is 28-year-old Peter Martinez, a Brooklyn gang member better known on the streets as Petey Crack. He's sprawled on Manhattan Beach's shoreline, discovered by a college student on a quiet Monday morning. His head is wrapped in duct tape, his arms bound behind his back. But what investigators found at the other end would turn this from just another gang murder into criminal history. Martinez's feet and shins are encased in concrete, trapped inside a 5-gallon bucket filled with over 50 pounds of hardened cement. The discovery sends shockwaves through the NYPD. Cement shoes have been the stuff of mafia legend for decades, featured in countless movies and mob stories. But crime historians can't recall a single documented case until now. This was the first and only confirmed case of cement shoes ever found in American history, and one of the many gang torture methods that are worse than death.
4 men identified by Houston police as MS-13 gang members are in jail. According to court records, they took turns hacking the victim to death with a machete.
Machetes that's one of their weapons of choice.
March 6, 2017, 6 MS-13 members stand in the Angeles National Forest, carrying out a ritual as old as the gang itself. Their victim, a rival who defaced MS-13 graffiti, is forced to his knees. In silence, they begin their grim work, knowing what comes next will carve their place within this notorious group forever. MS-13, or Mara Salvatrucha, isn't just another gang. Born from the brutal streets of Los Angeles in the 1980s, this organization's roots tap deep into El Salvador's Civil War trauma. Its members, spanning from teens to hardened veterans, carry out violence not just for territory, but as a test of loyalty, discipline, and rank. For many, the transition from frightened youth to feared enforcer starts the same way, with a machete. Their initiation rituals are infamous. Recruits must endure a 13-second beating, a number rich with gang lore. But for those seeking true advancement, MS-13 demands more, a murder, sometimes multiple, executed with deadly precision using machetes. These aren't random acts, but carefully orchestrated hits designed to demonstrate commitment and instill terror. The events of that March day in California weren't isolated. The indictment that followed would reveal a pattern of calculated brutality, stretching back years. MS-13's signature weapon isn't just tradition, it's psychological warfare. The machete is cheap, accessible, and horrifyingly effective, becoming the grim symbol of their power. Victims aren't chosen at random. They're usually other gang members, rivals, or anyone perceived as a threat. Some are lured by false promises of friendship or opportunity. Others stumble into MS-13's path through minor slights, like crossing out graffiti, associating with rivals, or even dating the wrong person. In one shocking case, a victim was not only dismissed, but his heart was cut out before his remains were scattered in the forest. A macabre calling card intended to send a message far beyond the body itself. The agencies investigating these crimes, the FBI, LAPD, and sheriffs, faced a wall of silence. Terror keeps witnesses quiet. Many of the victims were recent immigrants, targeted within their own communities. The gang preys on its own, using fear as both a weapon and a shield against law enforcement. For those who survive MS-13's initiation, the violence doesn't stop. Continued membership often means participating in more brutal acts. Each killing isn't just about the victim, it solidifies the killer's loyalty and climbs their internal hierarchy. Leaving isn't an option. Attempted escape is met with deadly consequences. Inside the gang, violence serves as both glue and gatekeeper. It binds members together through shared guilt and fear, while keeping outsiders terrified of interference. As one retired FBI agent noted, "Their violence isn't just about control, it's about creating an aura of invincibility." In court, prosecutors described the California murders as heinous, cruel, and depraved, eligible for death penalty consideration. The psychological impact on members is profound. Many start as vulnerable teens seeking protection or belonging. Over time, participation in these acts changes them fundamentally. Some describe feeling numb, while others develop a chilling detachment from human life. One former member recalled his first killing under MS-13 orders.
"Your first killing will be hard," his leader told him. "It will hurt. But I've killed 34 people. I'm too tired to do this one. The devil needs fresh blood."
Victims' families rarely find closure. MS-13's code of silence and community intimidation make prosecutions difficult. Many cases remain unsolved, lost in a labyrinth of fear and loyalty pacts. Even when arrests are made, witnesses face deadly retaliation for testifying. The Los Angeles indictments marked a turning point. 22 members and associates, all linked to the grisly California murders, now faced federal charges. The evidence detailed nearly 200 crimes over 9 years, painting a stark portrait of calculated violence. Some of the accused were found to be in the country illegally, having entered within the previous 4 years, a detail not lost on prosecutors determined to dismantle the organization. But MS-13's reach extends far beyond California. In 2016, the gang's escalating violence in Long Island claimed 25 lives. The FBI estimated their U.S. membership between 6,000 and 10,000, with even more operating in Central America. Their motto, kill, control, isn't just words, it's organizational doctrine enforced through relentless brutality. The challenge for law enforcement goes beyond arrests. MS-13's decentralized structure and emphasis on social bonds make infiltration difficult. Traditional strategies often backfire. Deportations simply relocate members who spread their methods to new territories. Every conviction seems to inspire greater violence from those remaining. For those who try to escape, the consequences are dire. One former member, turned witness, described his constant fear after cooperating with authorities.
"They said the only way out is a coffin. If I disappeared one day, it's because I'm already dead."
His testimony helped convict several high-ranking members, but his own life remains in constant danger. But if you think MS-13's methods are brutal, wait until you see what the next gang does to anyone who crosses them. Because while MS-13 perfects fear through tradition, the next case takes torture to an industrial level. May 2, 2013, Oklahoma. A member of the Universal Aryan Brotherhood who hadn't been moving enough meth was about to learn what happens when you disappoint the Brotherhood. The Universal Aryan Brotherhood, Oklahoma's homegrown strain of America's most infamous prison gang. Unlike other criminal organizations that operate in the shadows, the UAB runs openly inside Oklahoma's correction system. They've got a military-style command structure, a main council of 12 imprisoned leaders who issue orders from maximum security cells, sub-councils and medium security facilities, and yard captains who enforce discipline with brutal efficiency. Outside prison walls, in what they call the free world, UAB soldiers manage statewide meth distribution networks, while Featherwoods, their term for female associates, smuggle drugs, weapons, and messages in and out of facilities. The Brotherhood's motto is simple: blood in, blood out. Get in by spilling blood. Leave only when you're dead. Between those 2 points, members wear their allegiance on their necks, SS lightning bolt tattoos marking them as full-fledged brothers. But one member had been falling short. He wasn't selling his quota of methamphetamine, and in an organization where defiance means death and disobedience means something worse, his failures hadn't gone unnoticed. The main council had made its decision. This brother needed to be made an example of, not killed, but marked forever as someone who had failed the family. That morning, Ronnie Dirty Red Haskins, Robert Bryan, and Aaron Clay King, a handsome drug dealer just 3 months out of prison, drove to the brothers' location. They didn't come to talk. A man nicknamed Buddha pulled out a hunting knife. Then someone heated the blade until it glowed red hot. The brother knew what was coming. This wasn't about punishment. It was about permanently erasing his membership in the only way the Brotherhood knew how: by burning it off his skin. Haskins and Bryan pinned the victim down while he screamed. King gripped the superheated blade. Then he pressed it against the brother's neck. right where the SS lightning bolts had been tattooed years earlier as a badge of honor. The knife seared through skin and tissue, turning flesh into charred, bubbling wounds. The lightning bolts melted into permanent scars. For 30 agonizing minutes, they held him down. The smell of burning flesh filled the air. When they finally let go, the brother's neck was a mass of boils and disfigured tissue, a walking warning to anyone else who thought about crossing the UAB. In his plea deal, Brian would later admit exactly what they'd done.
I knowingly, willfully, and intentionally pinned FH's arm down in order to prevent FH from defending himself, while a UAB member held a heated hunting knife on FH's neck, burning FH's UAB patch tattoo off of his skin and causing permanent scarring.
Torture appeared in a federal indictment filed in November 2014 against 11 alleged UAB members and associates. Brian eventually pleaded guilty to his role in the attack. So did Aaron Clay King and Carl Matthew Smith, another UAB associate. But here's the thing, sending gang members to prison doesn't exactly weaken a gang that was born behind bars and thrives there. Federal prosecutors issued no triumphant press releases, no promises to dismantle the UAB. Because how do you defeat an organization that doesn't just operate inside prisons, but practically owns them? Each arrest just adds another soldier to their ranks. As one former federal prosecutor put it,
"This gang is like a hydra. You cut off a limb and it's gonna grow back. These guys have been around a long time and they're gonna get new leaders."
Meanwhile, the UAB's main counsel kept running operations from inside maximum security. Anthony R. Hall, a tattooed skinhead who'd spent 20 years behind bars, used smuggled cell phones to orchestrate meth sales across Oklahoma City and Tulsa. On March 24, 2014, nearly a year after the torture, Hall issued another order: burn a vehicle belonging to a drug user who hadn't paid. The message was clear: cross the brotherhood, fail the brotherhood, owe the brotherhood, and fire, pain, or worse would follow. The brotherhood's grip on Oklahoma's prisons remains unbroken. Their network of violence and meth continues to operate both inside prison walls and out in the free world. Because in their world, membership isn't optional, and leaving isn't an option at all. That torture with the heated knife was horrific, but it's nothing compared to what happened when a Dallas Aryan Brotherhood lieutenant decided to collect on a debt. What came next involved a hammer, a machete, and a power drill, and it would shock even seasoned homicide detectives. Inside the federal prison system, the Aryan Brotherhood doesn't just kill to settle scores, they kill to send messages. And when it comes to delivering those messages, they've turned prison murder into a brutal art form. Their method has a name among corrections officers who've witnessed it: Shankfest. It's not a quick stab and walk away. It's organized chaos, designed to maximize terror. The AB's ruling commission doesn't authorize a simple hit. When they green light a target, they order what they call a red light kill. That means the victim doesn't just die, they're butchered in the most public, vicious way possible, often in broad daylight with guards watching. Former AB Commissioner John Greshner laid it out clearly in an interview.
"It's not just gonna be a few clean stab marks. It's gonna be a vicious, brutal killing. Because that's how brothers take care of business."
Here's how it works. The target gets marked. Word spreads through the prison's AB network using coded messages written in invisible ink or passed through corrupted staff. Sometimes wives and girlfriends on the outside relay orders during prison visits, speaking in pre-arranged code phrases that sound like casual conversation. When the moment arrives, it's never one man with one shank. It's a coordinated assault. Multiple AB members converge on the target simultaneously, each armed with homemade weapons, sharpened toothbrushes, filed down metal, broken glass embedded in handles. The attack happens in high traffic areas: the prison yard during recreation time, the chow hall during lunch, the corridor during a shift change, anywhere with maximum visibility. Because the brutality isn't just about killing someone, it's about making sure every inmate, every guard, every person in that facility sees what happens when you cross the Aryan Brotherhood. Guards rush in, But by then, the damage is done. The victim lies on the concrete, stabbed dozens of times, sometimes more than 100. Blood everywhere. Witnesses frozen in place, knowing they've just seen what awaits anyone who talks, anyone who disrespects, anyone who breaks the code. And here's the twisted part. AB members compete over body counts. Remember Clayton Fountain, who murdered Officer Robert Hoffman just hours after Tommy Silverstein killed Officer Merle Klutz? Fountain admitted he did it because he didn't want Silverstein to have a higher body count than him. Prison murder as a status competition. The AB refined this method throughout the 1980s and 90s, racking up kills at an astonishing rate. Authorities calculated that while AB members made up less than 0.1% of the U.S. prison population, they were responsible for 18% of all prison murders. Even when officials transferred AB leaders to supermax facilities, locking them in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day, the killing continued. The gang's sophisticated communication network meant commissioners could still order hits from isolation, directing operations through encrypted letters and coded phone calls. The supermax strategy failed spectacularly. In 2002, frustrated federal prosecutors indicted 29 AB leaders under RICO statutes, seeking the death penalty for 21 of them, even though most were already serving life sentences. The goal was simple: execute the leadership to stop the violence. But juries returned convictions without a single death sentence. The so-called deportation strike had failed. The AB's reign of terror inside America's prisons continued unchecked. And the group's expansion didn't stop at prison walls. By the 1990s, the AB was operating major criminal enterprises on the streets: drug trafficking, murder for hire, armed robbery, gun running, methamphetamine manufacturing. They even instituted a 20% tax on all profits from AB criminal activity outside prison, funneling millions back to the imprisoned leadership. Their reach extended to the highest levels of organized crime. When mob boss John Gotti landed in Marion Federal Prison in 1992, he hired the Aryan Brotherhood for protection. That partnership opened doors for the AB, connecting them with Italian mafia networks on the outside and giving the white supremacist prison gang unprecedented power in major cities across America. The AB's violence isn't random chaos, it's calculated terrorism, operating under a strict military-style hierarchy with rules, codes, and consequences for breaking them. New recruits must make their bones by attacking rival gang members or corrections officers. The gang's motto says it all: blood in, blood out. You kill to get in. Death is the only way out. But the Aryan Brotherhood's most disturbing evolution came when they started enforcing loyalty within their own ranks. In recent years, the leadership has ordered hits on their own members who showed signs of cooperating with authorities or who violated the code after release. These internal executions make the standard Shankfest look merciful. One AB member had 5 fingers cut off with bolt cutters before being killed. Another was burned in the anus and genitals with a soldering iron.
There was nothing quick about their deaths,
said Bruce Toney, Inspector General of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. The message was clear: loyalty is absolute and betrayal brings unimaginable suffering. But if you think the Aryan Brotherhood represents the peak of prison gang brutality, think again, because another gang took those same tactics, added even more savage innovations, and built an empire that reaches far beyond prison walls into entire neighborhoods and cities. May the 2nd, 2016. A college student walking along Manhattan Beach's shoreline spots something dark against the sand. As he gets closer, his stomach drops. It's a body wrapped in black plastic bags, duct tape wound tight around the head. But it's what's at the other end that stops him cold: a 5-gallon bucket filled with over 50 pounds of concrete, trapping the victim's feet and shins in a solid block. Peter Martinez, 28 years old, better known on the streets as Petey Crack, a G-Stone Crips crew member who'd spent most of his adult life dodging bullets and arrest warrants. Over 30 arrests scattered across his record: fraud, narcotics, weapons possession. He'd already survived one shooting back in 2008, a bullet wound scarred into his leg, a reminder that he'd been living on borrowed time. His girlfriend reported him missing in February. 2 months later, the ocean gave him back. Martinez wasn't just some random victim. This was a man who understood the rules of the streets, who knew what happened when you crossed the wrong people. Brooklyn's gang landscape was brutal, territorial, and unforgiving. The Crips had their turf, their enemies, their code. But something changed. Maybe it was an unpaid debt. Maybe he talked when he should have stayed silent. Maybe he made a power move that backfired. Whatever line Martinez crossed, someone decided he needed to be made an example of. And not just any example. They wanted to send a message that would echo through the borough, that would become legend.
Here's where it gets chilling. Creating cement shoes isn't quick. It's not a heat-of-the-moment decision. You need a bucket. In this case, a 5-gallon container. You need concrete mix, water, the right consistency. And then you need time. Hours, maybe even a full day in cold February weather for that concrete to harden completely. Which means Martinez either stood in that bucket as the concrete slowly trapped him, feeling it solidify around his ankles, his shins, knowing exactly what was coming. Or they killed him first, positioned his body, and waited. Either way, his killers weren't in a rush. They were methodical, patient, committed to making this happen. The method itself was straight out of mafia folklore, the kind of thing you see in movies like Lady in Cement or read about in E.L. Doctorow's Billy Bathgate. Crime historians had always dismissed it as urban legend, something that made for good storytelling but never actually happened. Thomas Repetto, who'd written extensively about organized crime, couldn't recall a single documented case. There's probably been real-life examples, but they've never been found. Until now.
Martinez's body didn't sink the way his killers planned. The concrete hadn't dried long enough, leaving air pockets throughout. Those bubbles turned his cement anchor into something closer to flotation. Not enough to keep him on the surface, but enough that when the currents shifted, when the tides pulled just right, his body surfaced. The discovery sent shockwaves through law enforcement. Chief of Detectives Robert Boyce stood before reporters, describing what they'd found.
This individual was wrapped in plastic bags. His arms were tied behind him, and his feet were submerged in concrete. Obviously a homicide.
Martinez's head was covered in duct tape, sealing his mouth and nostrils. The medical examiner would later confirm asphyxiation. Whether he was alive when they dumped him, conscious as the water closed over his head, remains one of many unanswered questions. His tattoos helped identify him. The 8 ball, the Virgin Mary holding a rose across his back. The same body art that once marked his identity now became the key to naming his corpse. The investigation hit dead ends fast. No witnesses came forward, no one in Martinez's circle was talking. The code of silence held even as detectives canvassed Brooklyn, even as the story made national headlines. Organized crime experts debated whether this was the work of professionals or amateurs imitating something they'd seen in films. Christian Cipollini, author of books on mob history, leaned toward the amateur theory.
What gangster is going to sit for 20 minutes to hours while fitting cement shoes? He pointed out.
Method was too cumbersome, too theatrical for professional hitmen who usually preferred efficiency over drama. But Scott Bernstein, another mafia historian, disagreed.
It has all the hallmarks of a professional mafia hit, he argued.
Brutality, the patience, the clear message being sent. These weren't the marks of amateurs. Both Russian and Italian organized crime groups still operated heavily in Brooklyn's Sheepshead Bay area, particularly around Brighton Beach. The territory was contested, dangerous, and controlled. Martinez's family held a funeral, but answers never came. No arrests were made. The case went cold, leaving behind only speculation and one undeniable fact. Cement shoes weren't just a legend anymore. They were real. And they were exactly as terrifying as the stories suggested. For decades, the phrase cement shoes had been shorthand for a mafia threat, something people joked about, referenced casually. Finding out it actually happened shattered that comfortable distance between myth and reality. Paul Bartolotti, who owned a concrete company in Brooklyn, tried to imagine the logistics when reporters called.
They could have gotten just a bag and added water, like Carvel ice cream consistency.
He estimated it would take at least half a day in cold weather for someone to be completely trapped.
They could make the guy stand in it or put his legs in and pour the cement around it. He could have been dead and they just stuck his feet in.
Either scenario is nightmare fuel. The historical record showed only 2 other cases that came close. Ernest Rupolo in 1964, found in Jamaica Bay with concrete blocks tied to his legs. And Johnny Goodman in 1941, weighed down with a 40-pound concrete block. But blocks aren't the same as shoes. Martinez's case was different, unique. The first and only confirmed case of actual cement shoes in American criminal history. Think about that for a second. Every mob movie, every crime novel, every threatening reference to sleeping with the fishes. It was all based on something that, until Peter Martinez washed ashore, had never actually been proven to exist. But cement shoes aren't the only method gangs use to make their victims disappear. Some torture techniques are designed not to kill, but to send a message that death would be a mercy. July 16, 2014. Levi Phipps received a call that would haunt him for years. The crematory manager was told to be at the funeral home that night and to leave the hangar door open. Merle Hefferman wasn't your typical Hells Angels member. At 54, he'd spent decades building connections that extended far beyond the biker gang's usual network. One of those connections was Phipps, who managed the Yost and Webb Funeral Home in Fresno, California, a place the Hells Angels had quietly nicknamed the Pizza Oven. The name wasn't a joke, it was a promise. For years, the Hells Angels of Sonoma County had operated with near impunity. When members went missing, no bodies ever surfaced, no graves were dug, no questions were asked. The gang had discovered something most criminal organizations only dream of, a way to make problems vanish without a trace. Hefferman's relationship with Phipps gave them that power. A funeral home with a crematorium, no paperwork required, no death certificates, just ashes scattered to the wind. Joel Silva made a fatal mistake. The Hells Angels member had run afoul of the gang's leadership, crossing lines you don't come back from. On July 15, 2014, he was lured to the Fresno clubhouse. He thought he was settling a dispute. Brian Wendt put a bullet in his head instead. But killing Silva was only half the problem. The body needed to disappear. That's when Hefferman made the call to Phipps. That night at the funeral home, Phipps found himself staring down the barrel of a gun. 2 men he didn't recognize loaded something heavy into the crematorium while he stood frozen. He knew better than to ask questions. The incinerator roared to life. Within hours, Joel Silva had been reduced to ash and bone fragments. His family would spend the next 8 years wondering what happened to their son. Shortly after the cremation, Phipps received another call from Hefferman. This one was simple: keep your mouth shut. But Silva wasn't the only body that went into the pizza oven. Several months later, Phipps got another call. Same instructions, same hangar door left open, same threats. Phone records would later confirm Hefferman contacted him right around the time Robbie Huff, another Hells Angels member, vanished without a trace. Huff had helped cover up Silva's murder. Now he was being covered up too. The pattern was unmistakable. When someone crossed the Hells Angels, they didn't just die. They ceased to exist. 2016 brought another call, another body. Art Karasis, a Hells Angels member who'd become a liability, went missing. Once again, phone records showed contact between Hefferman and Phipps right around the disappearance. Federal prosecutors would later argue there was a 4th victim, Juan Guevara, whose body met the same fate. The crematorium had become an assembly line of erasure.
The nearly identical pattern of contact between Hefferman and Phipps near the time of both the Silva murder and Huff disappearance is powerful corroboration, prosecutors wrote in court documents.
The bodies were gone, but secrets have a way of surfacing. When federal investigators finally cracked the Hells Angels racketeering case in 2022, Phipps broke his silence. His testimony, corroborated by cell phone records, laid out the entire operation. The hangar door, the threats, the bodies loaded into the crematorium like logs into a furnace. 3 Hells Angels members were convicted of Silva's murder. Brian Wendt for pulling the trigger, Jonathan Nelson and Russell Taylor Ott for orchestrating it. Hefferman pleaded guilty to obstructing justice by disposing of Silva's body. But here's the thing, he was never charged with the other 3 cremations. His attorneys argued the prosecution couldn't make a strong enough case. Despite ample opportunities, they wrote,
"It is clear that the government did not find Phipps credible enough to seek additional charges."
Silva's family wrote a victim impact statement that cut to the bone.
"Not knowing where our son was for years was difficult and extremely emotional. The Hells Angels are all cowards. They took Joel's life over somebody's ego, and no one has the right to take anyone's life."
They never got a body to mourn over, never got closure, just the knowledge that their son had been reduced to ash in a funeral home known to killers as the Pizza Oven. October 19, 2022. Hefferman stood before the judge. Prosecutors demanded 7 years in prison. His attorneys argued for 2.5. He got 4 years for making one man disappear, while 3 others remained officially unaccounted for in the eyes of the law.